How does a Catholic Archbishop, excommunicated by Rome, gets buried with full Catholic honors? How does that happen? How can a man punished by the church still receive a funeral mass inside the cathedral he once ruled? Was he a rebel, a misunderstood bishop, or a shepherd who crossed the line he believed was necessary? This is the dramatic story of Archbishop Telesphore George Mpundu, the former Archbishop of Lusaka, Zambia. A man praised for courage, criticized for disobedience, and remembered even in controversy. Long before all of this, the controversy, the excommunication, long before international headlines, there was simply a young boy born in May 1947 at Kapatu Mission in Zambia. Like many African Catholics of his generation, Mpundu grew up in a church built by missionaries, a church that was still young, still growing, and still finding its African voice. And from early on, he felt called to serve. In December 1972, he was ordained a Catholic priest. For years, he served quietly, faithfully, far from global attention. But Zambia was changing, and Africa was changing too. The Catholic Church in Africa was becoming increasingly vocal on politics, corruption, and injustice. Mpundu would become one of the loudest voices of that generation. In 1987, Rome appointed Father Telesphore Mpundu as Bishop of Mpala, now known as the Diocese of Mpika. He would spend 19 years there. That alone tells you a lot. The Vatican trusted him. The local church respected him. And gradually, he became one of the most influential Catholic voices in Zambia. Not just spiritually, but politically. Mpundu was not the kind of bishop who stayed silent. He spoke openly against corruption. He criticized abuse of power. And he challenged politicians when he believed justice was under attack. Many Catholics admired him for this. Others, however, believed he was too confrontational. But one thing was undeniable. Archbishop Mpundu was fearless. In 2004, he was appointed Coadjutor Archbishop of Lusaka. And 2 years later, in 2006, he officially became Archbishop of Zambia's most important Catholic archdiocese. The position carried enormous influence, and Mpundu used that influence boldly. He served multiple times as president of the Zambia Conference of Catholic Bishops. His voice mattered nationally. And when Zambia faced political tension, people listened to Archbishop Mpundu. When corruption increased, he spoke. When democracy seemed threatened, he responded. And so to many ordinary Catholics, he became more than just a bishop. He became a moral voice for the nation. But then came the decision that would forever change his legacy. In March 2024, Archbishop Mpundu secretly consecrated a bishop without permission from Rome. In Catholic canon law, this is one of the gravest acts a bishop can commit. But why did he do it? Bishops are successors of the apostles, and in the Catholic Church, no bishop may ordain another bishop without approval from the Pope. The man consecrated, the man in the eye of the storm, was Father Anthony Ward. When news became public in 2025, the Vatican confirmed what canon law already stated. Both men had incurred automatic excommunication. Not because Rome, quote, hated them, but because Catholic law considers unauthorized episcopal consecration a serious wound against church unity. Many Catholics were shocked. How could such an experienced archbishop take such a risk? Did he believe Rome was wrong? Was he trying to preserve a movement? Did he think the situation justified extraordinary action? To this day, many questions remain unanswered. But what made this story even more dramatic was what happened after his death. On May 15, 2026, Archbishop Telesphore Mpundu died at the age of 78 while receiving treatment at Mainasoko Military Hospital in Lusaka. And immediately, confusion erupted among Catholics everywhere. Because despite the excommunication, the Catholic Archdiocese of Lusaka announced Catholic funeral rites for him. For many Catholics, this made no sense. How can an excommunicated archbishop receive a Catholic funeral? But canon law is more complex than many realize. Excommunication does not erase baptism. It does not erase priesthood. It does not even erase episcopal ordination. The Church still considers the person Catholic, though under severe penalty. And under Canon 1184, Church authorities may still allow funeral rites if there are signs of repentance, or if denying the funeral would create greater scandal and division. So while Rome punished the illicit consecration, the Church in Zambia still chose to pray publicly for the soul of Archbishop Mpundu. That decision itself sparked debate across the Catholic world. Some saw mercy, while others saw contradiction. But perhaps the funeral revealed something deeper about Catholicism itself. A church that disciplines, yet still prays for sinners. So how should history remember Archbishop Mpundu? Should we remember him as a courageous prophet, a disobedient bishop, a defender of justice, or a man whose final decision overshadowed decades of service? The truth is probably more complicated than any headline. Even after excommunication, Zambia's bishops praised his fight against corruption, his advocacy for justice, and his service to the nation. At his funeral mass, Archbishop Alec Banda described him as a man who refused to remain silent in the face of injustice. That tells us something important. Even in controversy, many still believed Archbishop Mpundu genuinely loved the church and his people. And perhaps that is why his story continues to provoke strong emotions. Because he was not a simple villain. He was a complicated shepherd living in complicated times. Archbishop Telesphore George Mpundu is gone. But the questions surrounding his life remain. How should the church balance obedience and conscience? Can a bishop defend truth, yet still cross dangerous lines? And what happens when the man spends decades serving the church, only for controversy to define his final years? Perhaps only God sees the full story. And perhaps history will remember Archbishop Mpundu not simply as the excommunicated archbishop, but as one of Africa's most controversial Catholic voices of the modern era. May his soul rest in peace.
Mesele